Can you apply the principles of Alex Hormozi's book, $100 million Offers to Construction Companies? Now, we all know construction companies operate in super competitive, commoditized environments. Our clients prescribe exactly what they want. They write detailed scopes of works. They send us drawings. How do you make an offer so good that people can't say no? So that's what I want to cover in this video, whether you can take the concepts from this book and apply it to a construction company. If you haven't read the book, I'll put a link in the description and I strongly recommend getting a copy. I've personally read it 2 or 3 times and listened to it about 5 times. It's an amazing book and it covers pretty much everything I know about entrepreneurship, which I'll say with a massive caveat isn't much. However, the whole basis of the book is, can you make an offer so good people feel stupid saying no? And I want to talk about that in the context of the construction industry. So this video is more for business to business construction companies like general contractors or subcontractors. And I want to talk about, can you actually take these principles and apply them to a construction business? The principles I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to apply to business construction companies, which is where I've had most of my experience. So I'm talking about a general contractor tendering for work from a project developer, or subcontractors tendering for work for general contractors. So it's business to business contracts. And this video, the principles of which will be most relevant to construction business owners or pre-contracts teams. What I'm going to cover is I'll go through the structure of the book and the core concepts, but these are by no means going to be a replica for the content in the actual book. So again, I strongly recommend reading it. We'll talk about the applications to construction companies, any gaps where I see you can't necessarily take what he's saying and apply it to business construction companies. And then finally, I'm going to put a link in the description of the video to a checklist you can use to try and apply these principles to your offering. Just quickly, my name's Tim. I run a website called Construct IQ where we teach the fundamentals of construction project management. So far, we've helped over 20,000 students. So if you're interested in checking out some of our courses on topics like estimating, procurement, contract management, and also we've got tons of free resources on the website. So I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out. So what are the core concepts of the book? Well, first one is he talks a lot about a grand slam offer. So this is the principle behind the book, where it's making an offer so good people feel stupid saying no. He talks about pricing. So basically developing a product or service where you're positioning yourself in a category of one and you're not operating in a commoditized industry. So for us in the construction industry, we know everything's an absolute race to the bottom. So I think that's an important topic to talk about. He talks about choosing a market, so finding a growing market in demand of your services, then creating your offer. So what are you actually proposing to sell and what are the terms and conditions around this? And finally, how to enhance your offer. So how to offer bonuses, scarcity, and these sorts of things. And now I'll just quickly go through each of these components in a bit more detail. The book starts by defining what an offer is. So an offer is, as Alex Hormozi defines it, the goods and services you agree to provide, how you accept payment, and the terms of the agreement. So there's a couple of components here to the offer. It's what you're actually providing, how you get paid for it. So whether you get paid before you provide it, whether you get paid before of it, and also the terms and services of the agreement. So there's things like a refund policy or any guarantees you have around it. He then uses the framework of pricing to expand on this idea of the Grand Slam offer. So he defines a Grand Slam offer as a product or service that you can't compare to anything else in the market. This is an important definition because it's contrary to a commoditized service. So a commoditized service is something where your clients make a decision based on price. So for us in the construction industry, again, most of the procurement decisions client make are price driven. So if they get 2 quotes from a contractor to build a bridge, one of those quotes is $3 million. One of those quotes is $2.5 million. Unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, the client is going to choose the cheaper price because the construction industry, by and large, is commoditized. So Alex Hormozi is defining a Grand Slam offer where clients aren't making decisions based on price. They're making decisions based on the value you provide. Then he progresses to talking about markets. So the way he talks about markets is the most important thing a business can have, rather than before he even starts talking about forming the Grand Slam offer, is operating in a market where there's a strong demand for the goods and services you're provided. So he refers to the demand for a product or service as more important than the strength of the offer, and then more important than your persuasion skills, so your ability to actually sell it. So he's basically saying the biggest determinant for success of your business is going to be finding the right market. So finding the product or service where it's most in demand. And he used the example of selling toilet paper during COVID, that with such an insane demand for the product, it was impossible not to make money. He then talks about what makes a great market. So he defines a great market as having a massive pain, so some problem they're desperately in demand for, having purchasing power, so the ability to pay for whatever solution you have. They're easy to target, so you can find people looking for this service, and they're also growing. So the industry that they're in is continuing to grow. And don't worry, I'm going to go through and apply all these specifically to the construction industry. I also work through an example of a company I saw that I thought was doing an amazing job of applying these principles, knowingly or unknowingly. I really like this stressing he does of the importance of the market you have to operate in, because working in the construction industry, I've seen that the biggest determinant of success for construction companies is the market they're operating in. I worked on tenders where our competitors have bid projects where the total value they've submitted to the client is less than the direct costs we've estimated to do the project. And what that means is they're saying that total project cost, the direct cost, the indirect cost, the risk, the profit, is less than what we thought the physical costs of just doing the work was. And it's because the market's so competitive, they're desperate to win work. They've been discounting their price and hoping to make it back on variation. So you can see when you have an insanely competitive market, it's almost impossible to find projects that you have any chance of making real money on. The next thing he talks about is creating your offer. Now, again, definitely recommend reading the book. The explanation he does of what forms an amazing offer is going to be way better than the one I'm about to give you. But the principle behind it is that you have 4 factors that determine the value you can deliver. You have the dream outcome. So what is the problem you're solving for the client? The perceived likelihood of achievement. So how likely are they to get that dream outcome if they purchase your product or service? Then on the bottom side of the equation, the factors that you want to try and eliminate is the time delay. So how long from when they purchase your product or service do they achieve their dream outcome, and then what effort and sacrifice they have to put into it. And then he bundles these up and says, together, these are the components that form the value you deliver. And remember, the whole premise behind making an offer so good people feel so stupid saying no is that you're offering such an insane amount of value that people don't look at the price, they purchase it based on the value you offer. So he says you have to focus on providing the best dream outcome, increasing the perceived likelihood of achieving it, reducing the time delay, so getting it to them as fast as possible, and then minimizing the amount of effort and sacrifice they have to put into it. After defining what a compelling offer is, the next thing he talks about is how you actually go ahead and create your offer. So first thing he talks about is finding a target client. So finding a specific person you're going to solve a problem for, then listing out all the steps they have to go through to solve this problem. And against each of these steps, you identify the obstacles. So what are all the things that could stop them achieving it? And then going through each of these obstacles and solving the obstacle for them. So listing out the problem as a solution. So if you use the example of, say, you're a concreting company and your clients are property developers. So what is their dream outcome? So for your business, their dream outcome is a finished concrete slab with no defects. You then need to list out all the obstacles they would encounter in doing it. So obviously, they need to develop design drawings. They need to get the design drawings approved by the building inspector. They need to then procure the reinforcement, concrete, and formwork. They need labor to come and install. You understand the point I'm making. And then against each of these steps, you can go through and identify what are the obstacles they'll encounter. So, for example, getting the building inspector to approve the drawings. Maybe they're a property developer from overseas and they don't understand the local regulations. You can go through and then solve all of these problems for them. You combine them all together and you offer your dream outcome. The next thing he talks about is actually enhancing the offer. So how do you, once you've solved all your clients' problems and bundled these up and created an offer, how do you then go through and make your offer better? So you can use bonuses, offering them additional things. You can use scarcity, so you can make them think that there's only a limited number of places. You can use urgency. You can use guarantees. So you could offer some sort of guarantee that if they don't get what they're looking for, you'll come and do all the work again for free, these sorts of things. And basically, he's talking about how from once you've identified all the solutions to your client's problems, how can you actually make the offer more compelling by enhancing it? I'm 100% confident that that summary I did isn't doing the book justice. So again, I would strongly recommend getting it for yourself and seeing what's in it. But now I want to go and look at, can you take these core concepts and apply them to a construction company, and specifically business to business construction companies that are operating in a competitive market? First thing I want to talk about is, how does the offer process work on a construction project? Well, for us, that's the procurement process. It starts with a client issuing a tender package, the client getting multiple quotes based on that scope of work. So they'll send out a scope of works, drawings, specifications, a bill of quantities. They'll say exactly what they want a potential subcontractor to do. They'll go and get multiple quotes for this. They'll assess these quotes, and basically they choose the lowest price. So they choose the person they think can do the work at the best possible price. What are then the challenges of making an offer so good people feel stupid saying no in this situation? Well, the first is the client is giving us incredibly prescriptive requirements to follow. They're telling us, these are the drawings, these are the specifications, here's the bill of quantities. We want you to quote exactly this and only this. Basically, they're forcing all of the potential quotes they're going to get to be exactly the same so they can compare them on one single factor, which is price. The client's procurement processes force this commoditization process. They basically define exactly what they want in extensive detail, so the only variable left isn't what we're offering them, it's the price we can do it for. So that's the biggest challenge in applying these principles and trying to sell yourself as a unique, super valuable offer. This leads to the inevitable problem that the client is making a price-based decision, which is exactly what, at the start of the book, what Alex Hormozi says to avoid. So that's why you result in a low-margin industry. It's hard to develop a category of one. So it's hard to find clients who are going to choose to work with us, and they're not making the decision primarily on price. They're making a price-based decision instead of a value-based decision. So which of these core concepts from the book can we take and extend into the construction industries when we're tendering for work? Our clients are making value-based decisions instead of price-based decisions. When I go through and do this, I'm going to talk about a company I saw which I thought had a brilliant strategy. I don't know if the owner read the book. I'm guessing probably not, but he was intuitively building a business around basically setting up a system where his clients were making value-based decisions rather than price-based decisions. The first and biggest takeaway I got from the book, which I mentioned before, is choosing the right market. That, to me, is the biggest determinant of success for any construction company. Are you chasing work in a market where there's a real potential to find profitable projects? That, to me, is the biggest determinant of success for any construction projects. Or are you constantly chasing work where there's 6 or 7 other bidders and it's a complete race to the bottom? So what makes a great market to find work for on a construction company? So I've mapped out the principles from the book: massive pain, purchasing power, easy to target, and growing. And I want to go through some examples of where I think this would manifest itself in the construction industry. The first one is massive pain. This would be a market where our clients, so if you're a subcontractor, general contractors, or project developers, they're struggling to get quotes for the package of work. So they can't find other subcontractors who can quote it for them. And having worked for a lot of general contractors, there's definitely situations where this comes up. Maybe it's a certain dollar value of a package, or it's for remote work. There will be certain niches in the market where it's hard to find subcontractors who can do the work. Second one is you want to find clients who aren't necessarily purely driven by money. So these will be more the blue chip clients, the bigger general contractors who are super risk averse, or whether your service is a portion of the project that doesn't form a massive part of the total project dollar value, but carries with it some significant risk or constraint. So what I really mean by this is you don't want to find a package of works where the client is almost definitely going to make a price-based decision. The next thing I want to talk about is easy to target. So what does easy to target mean in the construction industry? It basically means there's lots of packages or tenders coming out and there's opportunity with repeat clients. So ideally you'd find a client to work for who has a series of packages coming out. They have a series of projects and you've got the potential to tender on all of them. And then finally, you just want to choose a growing industry. So if there's a massive boom in civil infrastructure, renewable energy, commercial construction, these sorts of things, just finding a market where the overall industry is growing. So that's all well and good in theory, but how do you actually find a good market? Well, I think there's several tangible ways you could actually go out and do this. The first one, it's always going to depend on based on your skills and experience in the business you already operate. So for example, if you work in the construction industry as a concreting company, then you obviously can't transition to becoming an electrical company. So the first thing, got to be some application of the existing skills and experience you already possess. The next thing I think you can do is you can just look at general industry data. For example, in Australia, there's starting to be a bit of a downturn in civil infrastructure projects. Back when I was graduating from university, there was a massive boom in transport infrastructure projects. There were tunnels going in at all the major cities. There were rail upgrades everywhere. And you're starting to see a bit of a downturn in that. What we're seeing now is a massive boom in renewable energy projects. So that's just, and you can find that information out just purely looking at some of that industry data. The next one is you could look at tender portals. So there's certain services that list out packages that are coming up. You could just go through the website and see how many of what types of packages are coming out. So if you're a civil construction company and all the civil packages are for renewable energy projects, then you get a pretty good indication of that's where the money is. The next one I recommend is you can engage with your clients. So you can actually reach out to people who work on the client side that you know, and you could just ask them what sort of work is coming out, what sort of packages are you struggling to get quotes for, and they might just tell you. So it's great to connect with people in the industry and just find this stuff out directly. And then the final one I would recommend is every time you submit a tender, you want to get a pretty good feel of where your price sat versus your competitors. If you're always way off the mark with your price and you're very confident that you're pricing projects correctly, then that's a really good indication that the market you're in is saturated and people are pricing projects way too competitively. So how did I see this concept applied in practice? Well, the business I'm going to talk about is a landscaping business that specifically targeted renewable energy projects. Now, landscaping is obviously a relatively competitive industry. There's a lot of players in the market, but what this company did is they specifically targeted renewable energy projects that have big landscaping scope. So if you're working on a solar farm, there's usually a requirement to install plants all around the edge of the solar farm. There's also specific constraints on needing to install the plants before you can start installing the panels because of certain development approvals. And they knew this requirement. They knew there was this massive demand for this specific trade, and they focused their whole business on chasing this particular type of work. Okay, so once you've chosen your target market, what's the next thing you need to do? You need to develop your Grand Slam offer, or as close to a Grand Slam offer as we can get in a heavily commoditized industry. This means the dream outcome. So what does the client want to get out of this package? This doesn't mean the physical product you're delivering. This means looking at the project as a whole. How does the trade you're quoting for, or how does the project you're tendering to build fit into the client's business? What are their specific objectives of the project? Are they madly focused on finishing the project as fast as possible so they can start generating power? Is it a technically complicated project and the project engineers and managers that the client has working on the project, do they need help understanding the requirements? So it just really means you need to do some investigation to understand exactly what your client wants to get out of the package. The next thing is the likelihood of achievement. Does the client believe your company is the right fit for the project? Do they actually believe you can do the work? The next one, which is a massive one in construction, I love how this was included in the value equation, is the time delay. So from the point in time where the contract's issued, how quickly can you finish the work? That's going to come down to your schedule. And the final one is the effort and sacrifice. Basically, how easy you're going to be to work with as a contractor, how much work are they going to have to put in to manage and supervise you. So just expanding on the dream outcome. So the point I want to stress here is the dream outcome that your client has will be unique and different on every single project. You have to understand the context of how the project fits into their business as a whole and what they're actually aiming to get for it. So this means you have to engage with your client and you have to target exactly what the client wants. So whether that's engaging with the decision maker or simply reviewing the bid documents in detail, if they're prescriptive enough. So some examples of where there might be variability in what the client wants over and above what they're saying in the bid documents is they might care about your technical solution. So if you're providing a complicated bit of electrical plant, maybe they care about the reliability. Do they care about the schedule, which I've already mentioned? Do they care how quickly you can finish the job? Do they care about the quality standards? So they're very strict about not having defects. Do they really want to hand over the project as a finished piece of work and not have to worry about any legacy issues? Or are you working in an industry like the oil and gas industry where safety is an incredibly important outcome for the project? So it's really about understanding exactly what your client values in your offer. Do they just value the cost, or are there these other non-price factors that you can use to distinguish your tender? The next thing you have to demonstrate to make your compelling offer is increase the likelihood of achieving the project outcomes in your client's mind. So this really comes down to demonstrating your solution. So basically, through your tender submission, you can create a methodology, you can submit a schedule, you can show your project management approach. For example, show you have a certain quality management software that'll integrate into their systems. Basically, you just want to show them that you're the best fit for the job and you're 100% capable of meeting their requirements for the work. So that'll really come down to preparing your tender submission, putting in case studies, demonstrating your methodology, putting in supporting documentation, but also just engaging with your client as much as possible, trying to build a personal relationship with them so they trust you and they trust that you're the one that's best to get the job done. So we've understood the client drivers and we're increasing the value we're offering, and we're also increasing the perception in the client's eyes that we can achieve it. So we want to make them feel 100% confident that we're the best pick for the job. On the other side of the coin, we want to decrease the time it takes us to do it. So we want to understand, and this will vary a bit package to package and job to job, is on some projects, the client will be incredibly time driven. They'll care almost more than anything about finishing the project by a certain date. Say there's a certain milestone they have to meet, or for example, on a lot of renewable energy projects, the client wants to finish as fast as possible to start using the asset to generating power and making money. So they tend to be very time focused. So what you can then do in your solution, other than just focusing on price, is you can actually work out, can you do the job at half the time as your competitors? Can you get materials faster? Do you have more resources that you can apply to the project? Can you come up with a methodology? And basically, what can you do to finish the project ahead of schedule? So that'll really come down to your scheduling, your planning, and your methodology. The next thing that I think construction companies can go a long way to decreasing, at least the perception in the client's eyes, is the effort and sacrifice it's going to take to manage you as a contractor. I know, having worked for a general contractor and making procurement decisions, you can just tell the subcontractors that are going to be a headache to deal with. They don't look at the documentation you send them. They don't answer your calls. They send back a letter of offer with a ton of exclusions, and they don't really look through the documentation properly. And right off the bat, you know that's the type of contractor who is going to be a pain to deal with. They're not going to answer calls. They're not going to read emails. So my point here is that as a contractor, you want to be demonstrating to your client that you're going to be the contractor that takes them the least effort to manage. And that is something that clients will definitely value. So how did this landscaping company I was talking about actually take all this and make a compelling offer? Well, because they were so focused on targeting their niche of landscaping in the renewable industry, they understood that as solar project developers, people are sensitive to finishing the landscaping as early as possible because a lot of the development approvals require installing the plants before you can actually install panels. So a lot of Local residents will be upset that there's a solar farm going in next door to them, so the development approvals might have a clause that says you can't actually start installing panels till the landscaping's done. So then they focus their whole solution around getting the landscaping done as fast as possible. They found certain suppliers that could deliver plants faster, and basically that's what they crafted their whole solution around. So at the end of the day, the company making the procurement decision won't be making a price-based decision, they'll be making a value-based decision because they understand that this contractor knows exactly what they want and can deliver them the outcome that they're looking for. So finally, how do you actually enhance your offer? So we've made a compelling offer. How can we make it even better? The first application is bonuses. So can we actually go and do additional work that our competitors can't do? If we're a concreting company, are we willing to do the detailed excavation as well? Are we willing to do the service penetrations? Basically, are we willing to take on additional scope? So guaranteed, the best application of guarantees I can think of are in the specific terms and conditions of the contract. Are we so happy with our ability to manage and deliver the project that we'd be willing to sign certain commercial terms that our competitors wouldn't be willing to sign? Then scarcity. So scarcity, I was thinking about the applications of scarcity to construction companies, and I actually think it's probably best to avoid demonstrating any source of scarcity to your clients. The reason this is one of the factors clients use for assessing construction tenders is whether the company you're choosing is going to have other ongoing competing projects. So if you turn around and say to your clients, well, we've got these 10 other projects coming up and that's why you have to make a decision in the next week or we're not going to be able to do it, I just think your clients would turn around and think that you're overcommitted to other jobs and you're not going to be able to provide the resources needed for this project. So overall, I would say for construction companies, best to avoid scarcity. And the final one, to enhance your offer, I think construction companies could use urgency quite effectively though. So the way I see urgency being used is really developing a schedule, understanding the schedule, and understanding what the notice to proceed date needs to be to meet their completion date. So if you can demonstrate to your client you've developed an accurate and realistic schedule, then can you show to them that you need to award the contract by a certain date to meet their practical completion date. As I said at the start, I don't think this video is any way a substitute for actually reading the book, so I'd highly recommend reading the book. It's a really enjoyable read, and as well, if you like the video, then I'll put a link in the description of the video to our website where we've got tons of courses and free resources that you can use for your construction business. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.